Yeah, that worked out really well, didn't it? After being drafted 10th overall by the Giants, rookie defensive back Eli Apple has been the talk of New York, but not for the reasons you might think. Of course, we haven't gotten into the season yet, but his mom, Annie, has been snagging headlines left and right, most recently for dropping her son off at OTAs, which we discussed on the show last week. After that, Annie, you're very proactive. Hey, First Take, still waiting on that invite. Let's make it happen. Love you guys.
But skip town on me.
Yeah.
First of all,
scared.
for the record, it
take the
is
apple.
not that easy to get on First Take, okay? So all y'all out there can send a tweet your requests in. But we do have Annie Apple here with us today, and she has shown already to be very insightful, such an interesting perspective on the NFL and being a mom and all of those other arenas. So let's start with this.
Okay.
The criticism that you have received for being out there. How have you handled it?
I think, it's just like I always say, my focus is, I like to focus more on how good God is rather than how awful people can be. So that's my approach to life. So I take everything with a grain of salt. And I think as a parent, in parenting the whole process, when you have an athletic kid or just a gifted kid, it's like to keep them grounded. And that goes for the parents as well. So as long as I don't get caught up in the hype, the hate doesn't really bother me. You just have to take it as it comes and be even keeled and kind of know who you are and know what your identity is, and then from then on, you take it all. I'm very social by nature. I've been on Twitter since 2009. You know what I mean? Al Gore and I invented the internet, and I invented Twitter. So for me, it's just part of my personality. I was like that when Eli was in high school, when he was a recruit, when he was in college. I was on Twitter when we won the first college football playoff championship. Go Bucks! You know what I mean? So it's just, I think, what you do is you set a certain amount of standards and rules for yourself. I don't live tweet during a game. I don't discuss team business or whatever, because that's family. So, but anything else, I tweet mostly about chocolate, and Wendy's spicy chicken, and just,
The Bachelorette.
The Bachelorette.
Big
which
on that.
is just, bring back Chad, please. You know what I mean?
Just for the drama.
Yeah, but what's interesting to me about that is, we'll get to the rules that you said.
Okay.
That's an interesting demarcation line, because
Yeah.
we've seen other spouses and family members cross those lines, and that's where the trouble really starts for them. But before we get into that, I think it's interesting, when people started talking about you joining our NFL team here at ESPN, some of the response was, okay, so she's a player's mom. Is she going to tell us about tailgating recipes? That kind of BS. And then you look at your profile, your blog that you have, your Twitter feed is endlessly entertaining and insightful. So how do you
I'm taking her home with me.
No, I was trying to go to sleep last night, and I kept scrolling down. I'm like months down. I'm like, oh my
so
God, stop
random.
getting caught up in Annie Apple. But it's true though. That, there's these expectations that everyone fits into a box, and we like to say player moms are, oh well, they drove them to camp, and then they make them home cooked meals when they get home. You have so much more to offer than that. So how do you, when you approach this new gig, say to people like, give me a chance to prove that I am not just the supportive mom. I have insights and I have things that I can add that other people don't.
But I think the key is to try not to have anything to prove to anyone, to just really be organic and be authentic and be who you are. I think, Napoleon once said that the future destiny of a child is shaped by the mom. So I think as mothers are not just cooking and making recipe, we're really helping to build the foundation of who these young men are, how they see themselves, and how they respect others. So for me, it's just, I had someone, people tweet at you, oh, well, why are you even talking? Then somebody was like, oh, well, you are educators, you're a journalist, so you can talk. And my thing is, no. A woman does not need society's permission to have an opinion or to express an opinion. We have the right to speak whenever, however, within the scope of what we deem appropriate, because we are adults. So I think when you keep that in mind, plus I'm really extremely random, and I have my mother's West African, sense of humor. So you just take everything with a grain of salt. I'm naturally happy. It takes a lot to make me unhappy. And I think, I guess we'll get to it, but I think you have to set some standards and protocol for yourself. I always believe that processes takes out personalities. So when you have a process and you have what you do as a family, when you have rules, then you follow those and you live your life.
And you have these processes, and for, I'm assuming, a large chunk of time when Eli's in high school and perhaps in college, there aren't a lot of pressures exerted on that process. Now, all of a sudden, Eli's in New York City, in the NFL, where the pressure and the media attention and the dissection of everything he does is so magnified.
Don't forget the group
that
we've seen into his DM.
Not just his.
Not more of those.
What?
But now everybody's DM.
Now these other pressures, and we've talked to Miko Grimes, the wife of Brent Grimes, about how things that have been said about Brent in the media and around him aren't true, and then therefore you want to respond because perhaps before it's your son, it's Eli, but the conversation around him hasn't taken off. Now all of a sudden he might be your son, and the conversation that you don't have control over, people might be saying things that you don't agree with. So how do you deal with that?
Oh, I mean, first you have to understand, New York is a huge city. I love this city. I've lived here, I've worked here. Our daughter was born here. But Eli also came from Ohio State, where it's a big program. It's not some small school. So we've been through it, I've read it all. My motto is I never defend my son because it's not important and it doesn't matter. Everyone has the right to their opinion, just like I have the right to mine. You can't go fighting every battle because then you lose the moment and you lose the ability to enjoy watching your son do what he's dreamt about doing since he was 10 years old. If I'm distracted by all that, I'm not focused on what's important. And what's important is watching him get better, watching him do what he loves to do. So that's my motto. I don't defend him. I don't debate all of that. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, people live in your mansions rent-free. They have their opinions, but it's all up to you.
Take her home with me as my life coach because I am.
They're living rent-free in your mansions, parallel parked and lived there.
Yeah, don't give them space up here.
You can't. And I think for me, that's why I love this country. Everyone has the right to their opinion, and you have the right to block them. You know what I'm saying? It works either way, but that's part of the game, and I can't, as a parent, shun that. I think fans are passionate, but I always say passion without compassion leads to hate. So you have to kind of monitor that and keep that in perspective.
Right, and what you said about not tweeting during games, I'm sure that's partly your rule because you understand that your own passion might cause an Ayesha Curry, this game is rigged moment.
But you know what? For me, I always believe that it's not about what people say to you, how you respond. And so I think for me, it takes a lot. Like I never let anyone get to me like that. I'm glad I didn't live tweet, during our Penn State game 2 years ago, where it was just like such an experience getting from your car to the stadium. But I mean, that's all part of it. You take that all in, one thing that will help, and I recommend this for all moms and wives, have a group chat. That way you can text your group chat what you really want, and then you put the rest, to the world. So you just monitor that. But I mean, at the end of the day, who are you? And that's what it comes, because your response tells people who you are. And we all have hiccup moments, but I think you just focus on what's important. Your kid is living his dream. Nothing beats that.
So Annie, I'm contractually obligated to mention that I am also a mother, at least once every so you can all
team stretch marks.
Yes,
baby.
exactly. Gotcha.
Yes.
All right. So my kid's 13 and 11, and I know that sometimes when I discuss my social media greatness with them, they may or may not be so interested in it. Sometimes I get a little bit of a okay. So you being out there, I went to Giants camp after Eli came in, and I was like, so what do you think of your mom? And and he was so diplomatic. I guess you taught him well. But seriously, that relationship between you two, is it affected at all by your having a voice?
No, I think the key to parenting is when you're raising your kid, you're developing trust. And you make so much of an investment in that trust you've built that when they're all adults, they do trust your feedback or they do trust your recommendations. I always say once your kid becomes a teenager as a parent, you're more a consultant than anything else because you can't make them do anything. I think my job, what I do with Eli and with all our kids, is just to remind you who you are. Where do you want to go? And if you make a decision, I'm like, wow, is that really in line with what you're trying to do or where you're trying to go? So then they make that decision themselves. So it's not like I'm telling you what to do. I'm just reminding you who you are, and perhaps that decision or perhaps what you want to do doesn't fit in line with what you do and what you're trying, where you're trying to get. But we have a really great relationship. Eli's very chill. Like on his best day and worst day, he looks the same. So, and I'm like more animated, but I think we're very much alike, but we respect our differences, and I'm really proud of him, and I mean, he's excited for me. He just shakes his head all the time.
Yeah, so I want to ask this because I know from what I've seen from Eli, his answer is basically the same. She has always been like that. She will always be like that.
Crazy.
I'm just going to let it be, and so far you are nailing it, right? Not only is your opinion appreciated by people, but you're getting gigs out of it at ESPN.
Oh my God.
But I was, as I mentioned, scrolling your timeline.
I
right.
gotta eat.
Scrolling your timeline.
You don't have to buy me the house, Eli. I got it down.
Yeah. But I was scrolling your timeline and I noticed one particular, as I said, you're into The Bachelorette. You wrote, if Jordan Rogers' pants weren't so tight, he would have kicked James' butt. Tight pants will never let you prosper.
They're
okay,
too tight.
Hilarious, but you've now got Eli Apple on the eyes of Aaron Rodgers, right?
Let me tell you.
You're ripping on Aaron Rodgers' brother's tight
Let
pants.
me tell you, if Aaron needed to hear that to play well or not, then Aaron has 99 problems.
So you don't
and
believe
Eli's
in
not
bulletin?
one.
You don't believe in bulletin board
I really
material
don't.
for Eli's got his enemies aren't going to be enraged by
really
you.
don't, because I think when you have, when you are behind the scenes, because I mean, when your kid is at this level, you've gotten to know a lot of families, other players who've been there. These guys all are really professionals. They work hard. They love their job. They're going out there to win. No one is giving them more. If you're great or you're trying to be great, that's the motivation in itself.
It's not going to come down to you talking about his brother's
Oh my
pants.
God. You said-
I do want to
But
set up a
Aaron
meeting,
has
though.
to know.
I want you to be sitting next to Jordan Rogers at a Giants-Packers game.
You know what? But Aaron has to know. I'm sure he texts his brothers like, bro, those pants, the pants.
I want to know more about the process, because I think sometimes we can think of Twitter as everybody just sending off missives. I know I often spend as much time on a tweet as I might on like a paragraph in an actual
Are you serious?
story.
See,
And then
that's
I
how
delete
we're
it.
different.
She's very contemplative.
I'm wondering what your process is. Have in the last 6 months you composed a tweet and then deleted it? Yes, have you? What's your process? Do you fire
Well,
things off?
I think like sometimes autocorrect hates me. So if it puts a word that I don't like, I'll take it out. But I am really random by nature. And I think for me, what was more important was just to continue to be who I am. Not worrying about, I mean, you can't, I live for an audience of one. Whether you have 22,000 followers, the most important thing is who are you following? And I think for me, that's what keeps me grounded. I'm naturally awkward. I'm random, and I think like if I'm feeling something or if I've gone through something someone else has, so I kind of share that. And I think that's what people relate to. Someone asked me like, oh my God, what is your social media strategy? I don't have one. I'm just Annie. I'm born in West Africa, came to America as an immigrant. We had nothing. My mom had, everything we owned was in her purse, and she left it in a cap. So I mean, like, I know what is. Wow. So since then, I will walk behind her because now I've become my mother, and I leave and forget everything. Yeah. So I mean, for me, I'm just naturally, I'm thankful. I stay, grateful. So for me, it's not whether I tweet something. I'm random. I would complain, if I need more chocolate, which I
think you said once. Think twice. Tweet once, though. So there is something where you're aware, like it can't go straight. Like mine goes straight from the brain. I don't actually type it. I've got it rigged so that my Twitter just types whatever I'm thinking. That's why I get myself in trouble so much.
But you know what? I never really. There's nothing where. I mean, you're gonna offend someone no matter what you say. I mean, you can say, "Oh my God, I love red." Well, why don't you like green?
Yeah.
You hate all green. I mean, you can't live for that. You have to just know this is who I am. Really, I started blogging and tweeting probably 5 years ago because when you're a mom, you have 4 kids, you have a husband, you have so much random thoughts. No one wants to hear it. So you just want to share it with strangers. So for me, I always love writing. So that's just the way I get it out. But I think, I do well, I think.
You do well.
So far,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't worry about everyone. I can't worry about everyone.
You're very relatable. You're very authentic.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's a self-awareness there that we appreciate here, and I'm sure people at home do as well.
Did we give her Twitter handle?
Her Twitter handle is
Survive
in America without the G, no G.
Survive in America. You can follow Annie Apple there. She's actually going to continue to join us here on the show a little bit later and all season long on ESPN here on our NFL shows. So,
God, this is so awesome. I feel like the lost member of Bananarama.
It's a cruel summer.
that is the second time we have talked about bananas on this show. Maybe a little bit more later on. We do need to switch gears for just a moment because up next we're going to take a moment to remember the legendary Pat Summitt, examine the respect that women's sports will continue to get going forward. That's next on First Take.